Biker kicks dogs for fun, unaware Jason Statham is the owner. After Jason Statham and Rosie thought they had finally put the nightmare with the biker club's president behind them, Tucker and Vince's vendetta took a dark turn. Their actions escalated into vandalism and threats against local pets, shaking the peaceful Los Angeles neighborhood. Rumors spread like wildfire that dangerous bikers were targeting dogs, and the Iron Wolves' already fragile reputation was on the line. Now, Jason found himself in an unexpected position, defending the very motorcycle club he had once distrusted. Before diving into part 2 of this incredible story, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe if you like the video. The quiet of Venice, Los Angeles settled around Jason Statham and Rosie Alice Huntington Whitley's bedroom. Their 2 brown dachshunds, Dolly and Peggy, rested peacefully in their own beds, right by the master bed. The digital clock's soft glow read just past 2 a.m. The house was filled with an uneasy calm after the earlier confrontation with the bikers. Jason lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, still processing the day's events, the unexpected encounter at the gas station, the tense standoff with Tucker and Vince, and the surprising resolution at the biker clubhouse. It all seemed surreal in the stillness of the night. Rosie slept soundly beside him, her gentle breathing a soothing contrast to his restless mind. But then, Peggy suddenly woke up with a start. Jason watched as Peggy climbed out of her bed, her small body tense and alert. Dolly quickly followed suit, both dogs agitated, pacing around the room. This was unusual, especially for Dolly and Peggy, who were usually quiet sleepers until morning. Something wasn't right. Jason propped himself up on his elbows, his concern growing. "What's wrong, girls?" he whispered, careful not to wake Rosie. But his soft voice did little to calm them. Instead, they became more insistent, climbing onto the bed and pawing at their sleeping owners, desperate for attention. Rosie stirred sleepily. "Jason, what's going on?" "I'm not sure," Jason replied, sitting up fully. "The dogs are acting strange. They seem anxious. Something's off." As if to emphasize his point, Dolly let out a small whine and started scratching at the bedsheet. Peggy nuzzled Jason's hand, trying to pull him out of bed. "Maybe they need to go out?" Rosie suggested, still half asleep. Jason shook his head, his frown deepening. "No, this is different. They're not just restless, they're scared." He swung his legs over the side of the bed and reached for Dolly. "Come on, girl," he murmured, trying to get her back into her bed. But as soon as he set her down, she scrambled back onto the main bed. Both dogs began barking urgently, filling the room with their panicked yapping. Jason and Rosie exchanged worried glances. Now fully awake and alert, Rosie spoke first. "This isn't normal. Do you think something's wrong?" she asked. Jason shook his head. "No, I don't think they're sick. It's like they're trying to warn us about something." As if on cue, both dogs jumped off the bed and raced toward the door, barking even louder. They pawed at the door, looking back at Jason and Rosie with desperation in their eyes. Jason stood up, now fully alert. "I think they want to show us something," he said, moving toward the door. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me. I'll check it out." Rosie hesitated, worry on her face. "Should I come with you?" Jason paused, considering. After a moment, he shook his head. "No, stay here. I'll be back in a minute." Rosie nodded, though her unease was clear. "Okay, but be careful. And take your phone." Jason grabbed his phone from the nightstand, slipped it into his pajama pocket, and opened the bedroom door. Dolly and Peggy raced out ahead of him, their nails clicking on the hardwood floor as they raced toward the stairs. Jason followed them downstairs, his mind racing with possibilities. What was upsetting them? Was it just a false alarm, or was there something more to it? The house was eerily quiet as Jason reached the bottom of the stairs. The only sound was the dog's frantic panting. As soon as he reached the front door, they darted towards it, their barking louder than ever. Jason barely had time to process the situation before the piercing sound of the house's security alarm shattered the stillness. His heart skipped a beat, adrenaline rushing through him as he quickly checked the security panel. The system indicated a breach at the gate. Someone was trying to get in. Just as Jason was about to act, he heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Rosie rushing down the stairs, her face pale with worry. "Jason, what's going on?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the alarm. Jason quickly punched in the code to silence the alarm, and the house fell into an uneasy silence again. Someone tried to breach the gate. The system caught it, he explained, his voice tense. Rosie's eyes widened in fear. "Do you think it's those bikers? Tucker and Vince?" Jason's jaw clenched as he considered the possibility. "Maybe. We need to check it out." He moved toward the front door with Rosie right behind him. Dolly and Peggy were still barking, but their small bodies seemed to tremble with a mix of excitement and fear. Jason reached for the door handle, pausing. "Stay behind me," he instructed. "And be ready to call the police if necessary." Rosie nodded, her phone already in hand. As Jason opened the door and stepped outside into the cool night air, the street was strangely quiet. The only sound was the soft rustling of palm leaves in the breeze. Jason scanned the area, his body tense and ready for anything. "Let's check the gate," he whispered to Rosie. As they approached the gate, Jason's sharp eyes caught movement in the distance. 2 figures were running away. Even in the dim light, he recognized the distinct biker vests with the Iron Wolf insignia on their back. "Rosie, it's them," Jason said, his voice low and urgent. "Tucker and Vince." Rosie gasped. "They really came back?" Jason nodded grimly. "They must have come for revenge after today." They watched the 2 figures disappear around the corner. "This is bad," Jason said, his voice tight. "They know where we live now." They approached the gate and saw clear signs of tampering. The security panel's wires were exposed, and the gate had been vandalized with fresh graffiti. Crude images of dogs, along with the word "kill" spray-painted in large, angry letters. Rosie covered her mouth in shock. "Oh my God, Jason. This is horrible. We have to call the police." Jason nodded, his jaw set in determination. "This has gone too far. We'll handle it." Just then, the quiet of the night was broken by the sound of opening doors and concerned voices. Their celebrity neighbors, alerted by the alarm, began to emerge. Curious faces peered over fences and from doorways as people asked if everything was okay. Jason stepped forward, raising his voice to calm the crowd. "It's under control. We had a bit of a situation, but it's okay now. We saw 2 bikers running away. They tried to breach our gate and left some graffiti." The neighbors reacted with shock and concern. One asked nervously, "Bikers? Are they the same ones from the gas station incident?" Jason nodded. "Yes, we believe so." Another neighbor, a retired film director, spoke up. "This is getting out of hand. First they're harassing pet owners, and now they're vandalizing our homes. What about families with small children? It's not safe anymore." The tension grew, and people began suggesting measures like private security or better alarm systems. Rosie stepped forward, her voice steady despite her worry. "We're going to involve the police," she said. "This needs to stop." As the neighbors continued to voice their concerns, Jason noticed a disturbing trend. People were making generalizations about all bikers based on the actions of just a few. Recognizing the danger of letting those misconceptions spread, he raised his voice to calm them. "I know this situation is alarming," he said, his tone calm but firm. "But remember, these 2 individuals don't represent all bikers. Many bikers are good people, and some are even animal lovers. In fact, earlier today we met the leader of their club, and he was appalled by their behavior. He expelled them immediately." The crowd seemed to calm at Jason's words, with some neighbors nodding in agreement. "You're right," the retired director admitted. "We shouldn't judge an entire group based on the actions of a few bad apples." Jason gently encouraged the neighbors to return to their homes. "It's still the middle of the night," he reminded them. "We'll handle this with the police and keep you updated on any developments. Thanks for your understanding." As the neighbors slowly returned to their homes, Jason turned to Rosie with a rueful smile. So much for keeping a low profile, he said. Rosie laughed softly, the tension finally easing. I guess our quiet life just got a lot more exciting. Jason's expression turned serious again. We need to call the police now. And I should let PR know what happened. He needs to be aware that Tucker and Vince are still causing trouble. As they re-entered their home, the adrenaline from the night's events still coursing through them, they were met with an unsettling silence. The house, which had once been a sanctuary of peace, now felt vulnerable. Dolly and Peggy sensed the change and pressed close to their owners, whining softly. Jason bent down to scratch behind their ears, offering a reassuring smile. Good girls, he murmured. You did well tonight. Rosie locked the door behind them, double-checking the mechanism. So what's our next move? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason's eyes hardened with resolve. We need to handle this on two fronts. You call the police and report the incident. I'll contact PR and let him know what happened. He needs to know Tucker and Vince are still causing trouble, especially with the club's insignia. Rosie nodded, reaching for her phone. I'll handle the police. Jason pulled out his own phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found PR's number. Despite the late hour, PR answered immediately. What's going on? PR's voice was alert. Jason quickly explained. Tucker and Vince tried to break into our house tonight. They vandalized our gate, left threatening graffiti, and were wearing your club's vests, PR. The Iron Wolf insignia was clearly visible. There was a pause on the other end, then PR spoke with a mix of anger and determination. I can assure you, Jason, our club didn't sanction this. Tucker and Vince are no longer members. They're acting on their own. Jason nodded. I figured as much. But you need to know our neighbors are scared. They think all bikers hate dogs and are a danger to families. PR's tone turned grim. I understand. This is exactly the kind of situation we've been trying to avoid. Tucker and Vince are ruining our reputation and damaging our relationship with the community. Jason's voice was steady but firm. What are you going to do about it? I'm handling it right now, PR replied. I'm gathering my men. We'll take care of this. Jason hesitated. PR, please be careful. Whatever you do, avoid violence. We've informed the police. They're on their way. I'll handle it our way, PR said. But we'll keep it clean. You have my word. As Jason ended the call, he heard Rosie finishing her conversation with the police. He walked over to join her, Dolly and Peggy following behind. What did they say? He asked. They're on their way, Rosie replied, her expression a mix of relief and lingering concern. They'll be here soon. Jason nodded. PR is aware of the situation now. He's planning to deal with Tucker and Vince himself. Rosie raised an eyebrow. Is that a good thing? Before Jason could respond, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The police were here. He gave Rosie a reassuring squeeze. Let's deal with the police first. We'll worry about PR and his methods later. As they moved to the front door to meet the officers, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together, with Dolly and Peggy by their side. Jason squinted at the screen of his phone, the early morning light barely seeping through his window. I know it's late, Priest's voice crackled with urgency on the other end of the line. But you need to come down here. We're settling this the old way, club tradition, a dog competition at Venice Beach, 4 a.m. Jason frowned, confusion etched across his face. A dog competition? The police are already involved. They've collected evidence, and they're searching for Tucker and Vince. I know, replied, his voice a strange mix of excitement and seriousness. But this is how we handle things internally. It's about honor, Jason. It's not just a contest. It's a chance for resolution within our community. As went on about the importance of the competition, Jason noticed Rosie sitting up beside him, her eyes wide in disbelief. She shook her head vehemently, mouthing, "No way." Jason held up a hand, signaling her to wait. Jason began, his tone firm but measured, I understand this is important to you and the club, But Tucker and Vince crossed a line. There's been a crime here. Vandalism and a breach of personal property. There have to be legal consequences. I get that, Jason, I do, Pri said, his voice almost pleading now. But I'm asking for one favor. Let us settle this first, just one round. Then you can call the police if you want. Please, for the sake of our club's tradition and honor. Jason closed his eyes, weighing Pri's request. After a moment, he spoke, his voice reluctant but resolved. All right, Pri. I'll come. But keep it quick. We're exactly at Venice Beach. Just past the waterfront, near Ocean View Park, Pri replied quickly. It'll be quiet there this early. Rogue bikers and a midnight animal shelter rescue weren't exactly typical occurrences, even in Los Angeles. PR, who had been giving his own statement nearby, joined as Jason described the club's involvement. I want to make it clear, PR interjected, that Tucker and Vince's actions do not represent our club or its values. We came here to stop them and protect the animals. Detective Martinez nodded, making a note. We appreciate your cooperation. It's clear that your club's intervention was key to resolving this situation peacefully. As the statements wrapped up, Jason noticed the shift in the officer's demeanor. The initial suspicion toward the bikers had given way to a grudging respect, an acknowledgement that appearances could be deceiving. Well, Detective Martinez said, closing her notepad, we've got more than enough to press charges against Tucker and Vince. Attempted breaking and entering, vandalism, animal cruelty, possession of illegal substances. They're facing serious time. Jason and Rosie exchanged relieved glances. The nightmare that had started with a simple trip to the gas station was finally coming to an end. As the police prepared to leave, Jason noticed a small group of reporters gathering at the edge of the cordon. Word had spread, and the presence of a celebrity couple had attracted media attention. Rosie noticed them too, her body tensing slightly. Jason, she said quietly, I think it's time for us to go. We've done what we needed to hear. Jason nodded. They'd given their statements, ensured the animals' safety, and seen Tucker and Vince brought to justice. There was no reason to let this turn into a media circus. As they prepared to leave, PR approached them one last time. Thank you, he said earnestly, for trusting us and for being here. You didn't have to, but you were. You gave us a chance to make this right. Jason shook PR's hand firmly. Thank you for stepping up when it mattered. You've shown us there's a lot more to your club than meets the eye. A mutual understanding passed between them, a recognition of the unlikely alliance that had formed in the face of adversity. With final nods to the officers and shelter staff, Jason and Rosie made their way back to the car. Behind them, PR's voice carried across the scene as he addressed the reporters. This was our club's moment to show who we really are, PR said. We stand against anyone who would harm animals or threaten our neighbors. This is what being part of the community is about. Jason helped Rosie settle Dolly and Peggy into the back seat before climbing into the driver's seat himself. He looked back one last time at the scene. Police cars, animal shelter vans, and bikers standing shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement. It was an image that defied easy categorization. With a small smile, Jason started the engine. As they pulled away, leaving behind the chaos of the night and the bustle of the morning, a sense of peace began to take hold. The events of the past 24 hours were already fading in the rearview mirror. Jason and Rosie exchanged a knowing look, silently reflecting on the connection they'd forged with unexpected allies. As they arrived home, the familiar sight of their house brought a wave of relief. Dolly and Peggy perked up, their tails wagging as they recognized their surroundings. Just as Jason turned off the engine, their neighbor Tom, a retired film director, appeared from next door. Jason sighed under his breath, expecting more concerned questions. But as Tom approached, he looked more sheepish than worried. Jason, Rosie, Tom began, I owe you an apology. Caught off guard, Jason and Rosie exchanged glances. Tom continued, his tone sincere. I've been following the live coverage on the news. I think I was too quick to judge those bikers. Maybe all bikers, really. I saw how PR and his group helped apprehend those guys. And when I heard him talking about their love for animals and the community, well, I realized I was wrong. Tom shook his head with a rueful smile. I let my prejudices get the better of me, and I'm sorry for that. Rosie stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. We understand, Tom. It's been a tough time for all of us. What matters is you're willing to see things differently now. Jason nodded. Exactly. This experience has been eye-opening for us too. There's always more to people than meets the eye. With a wink, Tom added, Still, I didn't see you on the news, Jason. You should have been. Then he turned and walked back to his house, leaving Jason and Rosie smiling. Inside, Dolly and Peggy trotted in happily, thrilled to be home. Exhausted, Jason and Rosie collapsed onto the couch. The events of the night felt surreal in the bright morning light. Well, Jason said, breaking the silence, this wasn't exactly the quiet life in LA we'd planned. Rosie laughed, her voice light and full of relief. Definitely not. But honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. Jason nodded, absent-mindedly petting Peggy. You're right. We helped bridge a gap in our community. And who knows, maybe it's just the beginning. As sunlight streamed through the windows and the familiar sounds of the neighborhood filled the air, dogs barking, children laughing, and the distant rumble of motorcycles, Jason and Rosie exchanged a look of deep understanding. They'd faced the unexpected together and come out stronger for it. Life might not be as quiet as they'd envisioned, but it was rich with meaning and adventure. With Dolly and Peggy by their side, they felt ready for whatever surprises lay ahead.